Hi everyone, my name is Robert Gibson and this is Environmental Soup through YouTube. And today I'll talk about the Anti-Alberta Energy Campaign's inquiry, at least the letter. I'll have at least 2 videos about this. But to get things out of the way, it's filled with conspiracy, lies, mistruths, and people that are not credible. And I'm also hoping to gain subscribers. So if you're new to the channel, that would be appreciated. And Commissioner Stephens Allen wrote a letter about the Anti-Alberta campaigns, seeking input and commentary, about 4 pages. A few lines in, I learned that there was a report from Dr. Barry Cooper. I looked up Professor Dr. Barry Cooper, and I saw that there was support for Alberta separation in the video Western Alienation Forget Alienation Separate with Barry Cooper. And he's clearly not Indigenous. In the video he says, quote, "We would be much better off as an independent country," end quote. I also found that he is associated with Friends of Science, which denies climate change. And this is the opposite of what is being said by the International Panel on Climate Change, as well as Canadian law. There's already been court cases that have recognized climate change. I think I have an article in here that mentions that. And they're a lot more credible because they only look at peer-reviewed articles. And they're also trained in climate science. And in the article, this is one reason why I say that he's not Indigenous. Cooper Aboriginals have no claim to sovereignty. On January 22nd, 2013, from the Calgary Herald, he uses the term Indian, which is a derogatory term in a lot of places. He also doesn't capitalize nations in the article, which is a huge red flag for identifying racism. The article says that Indigenous people could be taken over because there were no nations before Europeans, which is clearly wrong. There were lots of nations in North America, and it's just an attempt to justify the doctrine of discovery. And in the textbook Climate Denialism, a submission to the public inquiry into anti-Alberta energy campaigns from the University of Law by Moulton Olszewski, Olszynski. Quote, all of them and reports minimize or outright dismiss the reality and seriousness of climate change, even though none of the authors appear to be trained in climate science. End quote. The article references court rulings. There's a quote in the article. Reference RE Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act 2019, SKCA 40, at para 4. Quote, the factual record presented to the court confirms that climate change caused by anthropogenic greenhouse gas GHG emissions is one of the great existential issues of our time, end quote. It also confirms the article also confirms no one has a background in climate science. I was also able to find that Dr. Nemeth has a PhD in history, which is not climate. History is important in understanding climate science. To clarify, but there needs to be climate training. Borzong Longborg was the author of The Skeptical Environments, and I believe it was Coolit, which reportedly deny climate change, and wrote climate alarm is as big a threat as climate change, leads to anxious lives and bad policies. Michael Schillenbogle is another climate change denial. One statement is that he got wrong according to Professor Emanuel, who is an MIT climate expert. MIT is like a prestigious university. Is that climate change doesn't make storms worse in the article. That's what the statement was. And then the professor talked about how it does make storms worse. And he also talked about that no one can speak for the entire environmental movement. In the article, Environmentalist Apology, how Michael Schoenberger unsettled some of his prominent supporters. Mike Miles does not appear to have experience in climate change either. In mineral law, I found that Mike Miles is the chair of oil and gas pipelines and mining industry team, so there would be an interest in attacking climate change policies. The letter continues with whether or not people agree with the statements made and acknowledging existing reports came from a common perspective. But it's troubling that there's no indigenous viewpoints, no viewpoints from climate scientists that were sought after ahead of time. That is very problematic. And it's also problematic that there's people that were sought out that justify colonialism directly in previous works. And climate has been proven in court. And in a future video, I will talk about the report itself and my thoughts on the actual report. And I know that there is a legal challenge to having the inquiry, and how this relates to Ontario or Peterborough is that federal law for national standards, you have to have consensus among the provinces, or the province with the weakest policy is the one that dictates the policy. So it's important to pay attention to what's happening in other provinces, because they have impacts Canada-wide. And yeah, that's everything that I have planned for this video, and I will be back with another video.